Yuri's mission. December 6th, 1997. A cold, quiet afternoon in the Russian wilderness. Yuri, a rugged ex-military man and seasoned weightlifter, led a group of 3 armed companions. A rifle in his grip and a determined look in his eyes, he strode ahead with unwavering confidence, his loyal dog scouting the path ahead. This was no ordinary outing. They were on a mission to uncover the mystery surrounding the disappearance of Vladimir, a fellow hunter. Their trek took them deeper into the heart of the forest, where silence hung like a shroud. Finally, they arrived at a grim scene, a destroyed cabin and the remains of a shed, both reduced to splinters. Wooden debris littered the area, beehive boxes smashed beyond recognition, and dark, dried blood splattered the ground, a haunting trail of chaos. The shed, they learned, had belonged to Vladimir, who had vanished just days earlier. Yuri approached the cabin cautiously, every step measured, his rifle poised. He opened the door to reveal an engulfing darkness, no windows, no light, just a suffocating void. It took a moment for his eyes to adjust. When they did, the scene before him sent a chill down his spine. Inside, the cabin was in ruins, furniture shattered into unrecognizable fragments, blood splattered across the walls and floor, and a sinister trail of crimson leading into the forest. It was clear to Yuri. Something had attacked Vladimir. The blood trail suggested he had escaped, wounded, into the forest, fleeing for his life. Yuri stepped outside, steeling himself to follow the grim path. But then the forest itself seemed to stir. First, his dog began whining, circling frantically as if sensing an unseen presence. Then a flock of crows erupted from a nearby tree, their cries piercing the air as they vanished into the sky. Finally, from deep within the woods came a sound, a low guttural growl that seemed to rise from the earth itself. It was primal, menacing, and unnervingly close. A shiver coursed through Yuri's body. 5 days earlier, Vladimir had ventured into this very forest with his 3 dogs, intent on securing game for the winter. A hunter through and through, he had built the cabin and shed as a base, determined to provide for his family despite the isolation. On December 1st, the forest had been eerily quiet. No signs of prey until Vladimir stumbled upon a macabre sight. The bloodied, steaming carcass of a freshly killed wild boar. He froze, unease creeping up his spine. Who or what had killed the animal? There was no time to ponder. Desperation drove him to act. With his axe in hand, he began cutting away chunks of meat, his dogs nervously pacing nearby. By the time Vladimir returned to his cabin, night had fallen and the air was thick with an unsettling stillness. He stored the meat in the shed, locked it securely, and turned toward his cabin. But then he realized something chilling. His dogs were no longer behind him. Vladimir's encounter with the mysterious creature, it was a moment that would forever change him. Turning back, he saw all 3 dogs standing still, staring intently into the dense forest beyond the shed. It was as if they sensed something lurking in the darkness. Puzzled, Vladimir called out to them, but they didn't respond. Instead, he pulled out his flashlight and directed its beam into the forest. The light revealed only tall, dark trees, nothing else. Uneasy, Vladimir tried calling them again. This time, 2 of the dogs reluctantly followed him back to the cabin. But the 3rd dog stayed behind, growling at the forest as if warning of something unseen. Suddenly the dog bolted into the woods. Vladimir yelled after him, pleading for him to return, but the dog didn't stop. It disappeared into the shadows, its growls fading as it ran deeper into the forest. Moments later, a guttural growl echoed from the woods, followed by the dog's sharp, pained whimper. Then there was silence. A chill ran down Vladimir's spine. He stood frozen, realizing his dog might have encountered a wild predator. Whether it was injured or worse, he couldn't bring himself to venture into the forest to find out. The oppressive silence of the night pressed in, and he retreated to the cabin, locking the door behind him, unsure of what he had just witnessed. Vladimir was gripped by fear. He thought, if I go out there and face a wild animal, I might not survive. Reluctantly, he took his 2 remaining dogs into the cabin, secured the door, and sat inside, his mind racing. He couldn't stop thinking about the dog he had lost. Those dogs were like his children. He had raised them with love and care, and now one was gone. Minutes passed in tense silence. Suddenly, Vladimir heard something, a sound outside, like wood breaking. It was as though someone or something was smashing his furniture. His cabin had no windows, as I've mentioned before, but Vladimir had drilled small holes in the walls, allowing him to peek outside. Cautiously, he moved toward one of these holes, the one closest to where the noise was coming from. Peering through, Vladimir's heart nearly stopped. His shed, the one he had just locked, was now broken. Something massive was tearing it apart. In the dim light, he could make out a large shadow, a creature, enormous and menacing, rummaging through his belongings. Its silhouette was terrifying, moving erratically, its every motion exuding raw power and danger. Vladimir stood frozen, unable to believe his eyes. What kind of creature could do this? The sight of it sent chills down his spine, and he realized that whatever was out there was unlike anything he had encountered before. The creature began tossing things around, smashing the entire shed to pieces. It grabbed the chunks of boar meat Vladimir had stored and started devouring them right there. Watching this, Vladimir realized something chilling. This boar must have belonged to the creature. It had hunted the animal, and Vladimir had unknowingly taken its kill. Now that the creature had retrieved its prize, Vladimir hoped it would leave, but he was wrong. The creature stayed, sitting ominously outside. Vladimir's heart raced as he thought about what might have drawn it here. Perhaps it was the scent of his dogs, and now it was waiting for them. Hours passed, and the creature remained unmoving. Exhausted and terrified, Vladimir eventually retreated deeper into the cabin and fell into an uneasy sleep. A few hours later, he woke up and cautiously approached the shed to see if the creature was still there. He peeked through the drilled holes, but everything was silent. The shed was destroyed and the forest was eerily quiet. Relieved, Vladimir checked the right side of the cabin through another hole. Nothing but dark trees. He moved to the left side, peering into the dense blackness, but still saw nothing. Finally, he crept to the back of the cabin to look out. At first, all was calm, but then a sudden violent crash shook the wall he was watching. Startled, Vladimir froze. Through the hole, he saw something terrifying, a pair of massive, glowing yellow eyes staring back at him. The creature was looking directly into the cabin. Vladimir was paralyzed with fear, unable to move, yet he forced himself to keep looking. The creature slowly backed away, revealing its face. Despite the darkness, Vladimir could make out its horrifying features. A grotesque, blood-covered face, massive teeth, and those menacing, glowing eyes. Vladimir was trembling, his heart pounding in his chest. The creature raised its enormous claw and struck the wooden cabin with tremendous force. The structure splintered and cracked, though it didn't completely collapse. Terrified, Vladimir grabbed his rifle and fired his rifle at the creature, hitting it. The beast let out a deafening roar before retreating into the forest. Shaken and terrified, Vladimir clutched his rifle and stayed inside the cabin, pacing throughout the night. He constantly checked through the small holes he had drilled, fearing the creature might return. But the night passed uneventfully, and as dawn broke, Vladimir cautiously opened the door to look outside. The shed was completely destroyed. To ensure no wild animal approached again, Vladimir fired 2 warning shots into the air. He stepped out, determined to uncover what had attacked him the previous night. As he moved forward, he noticed large footprints in the snow. Following them, Vladimir realized that the creature was not some supernatural being, but a Siberian tiger. Everything started to make sense. The tiger had hunted the boar, and Vladimir had unknowingly taken its kill. The tiger had followed the scent, seeking to reclaim its prize and perhaps tracking the dogs as well.
Despite surviving the night, Vladimir couldn't shake the memory of his third dog, the one that had bolted into the forest. Every instinct told him to search for it, but the risk of facing the tiger again loomed large in his mind. After agonizing over the decision, he resolved to seek help. Locking his cabin, he leashed his 2 remaining dogs and set off for his neighbor Ivan's house an hour's walk away. When Vladimir arrived, he pounded urgently on the door. The moment Ivan opened it, Vladimir rushed inside, bolting the door behind him. Ivan, startled by his neighbor's frantic demeanor, listened intently as Vladimir recounted the horrifying events of the previous night. The story left Ivan pale and speechless. "Vladimir, will you help me search for my dog?" Ivan, I can't. That tiger has marked you now. It will follow you and it won't stop until it gets to you. My advice? Leave this place while you still can. The weight of Ivan's words settled heavily on Vladimir. He realized his neighbor's refusal wasn't born of indifference but of terror. As Vladimir stepped out, gripping the leashes of his dogs, one of them suddenly broke free. Barking wildly, it bolted toward the forest. Vladimir, no, come back! But the dog didn't stop. It disappeared into the shadows, leaving Vladimir frozen in helpless dread. He knew the tiger was still out there, and pursuing the dog would likely seal his fate. Left with only one dog, Vladimir spent the day visiting other nearby cabins, hoping someone would help him. But every plea was met with the same grim response. The tiger has marked you. It won't stop until it gets you. Leave before it's too late. By nightfall, Vladimir was alone in his fight, his hope dwindling. When he returned to his cabin, he found it eerily disturbed. The outdoor sink was shattered, and the shed was a mess with its contents scattered across the ground. Then he noticed the cabin door, ajar, swaying slightly in the cold breeze. Fear clawed at his chest. Clutching his rifle tightly, Vladimir approached the cabin with trembling steps. Inside, the darkness was thick, oppressive, and silent. As his eyes adjusted, a faint sound broke the stillness, a soft, pitiful whimper. It was his missing dog. The sound led him to a pile of wooden debris. Heart racing, Vladimir scrambled to clear it away, revealing his injured dog beneath. Relief flooded him as he pulled the dog out, its whines weak but alive, but the relief was short-lived. He realized something chilling. The tiger had brought the dog here, wounded but alive, as bait. The predator was playing a deadly game, luring Vladimir out into the open for its final move. 4 days later, Yuri and his team arrived at Vladimir's cabin, called in to investigate his disappearance. As they stepped into the clearing, the atmosphere was thick with unease. Vladimir's remaining dog circled nervously, whimpering, while a flock of crows suddenly erupted from the treetops, their cries vanishing into the sky. Moments later, a deep growl rumbled from the forest, a sound so primal it made the seasoned hunters pause. Yuri, an experienced hunter, recognized it immediately. He signaled his team to follow the sound, but the growls grew fainter as they pressed deeper into the woods. Then they stumbled upon another clue, torn pieces of Vladimir's clothing scattered along the snow-covered ground. The trail led them to a chilling discovery. In a snow-covered clearing, 2 blood-red circles had been drawn in the ground. Inside one circle lay Vladimir's shredded clothes and remains. In the other lay his skull, stripped clean. The gruesome scene spoke volumes. The tiger had meticulously planned its revenge. It saw Vladimir as an intruder, someone who had stolen its kill and dared to wound it. Over days it stalked him, setting traps and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Yuri and his team eventually tracked the tiger to its lair. The ensuing battle was fierce, but they managed to kill the beast. Yet the triumph was hollow, for the tiger's vengeance had already left a trail of death and despair in its wake.